Hello, everyone, and welcome to Developing a Powerful LinkedIn Profile. My name is Dorothy Baumgartner, and I'm here with my colleague, McCall Searles. We are both career advisors here at WGU with a Career and Professional Development Office. And we have a couple of other advisors helping us today, so I want to just give a shout out to Cliff Guerin and Shante Mack. They're here monitoring the chat. We're really excited to have you join us today. This is a new workshop that we are launching this month in conjunction with our Career Quest series. And we've got some others that are coming up, so I'll do a little PSA on that in a minute. But we do want to invite you to really pay attention to this experience. We'd love to have your feedback if you would partner with us in learning about how to do this. And we want to make sure that this workshop helps serve your needs, and we're always in a learning mode and want to improve it. So please be mindful of that as we go through the workshop. We'd love to hear from you about that. We have a couple housekeeping things that I'd like to address just very quickly before we jump into the content, and that is just that we really recognize that people have different learning styles and needs and things going on in their lives. So feel free to get up and stretch, take care of yourself, or if you have things that you have to attend to that may cause you to step away, never fear, because as you heard, we are recording this workshop and it will be sent out to you after it's processed. Hopefully later today. Sometimes it takes 24 hours. But you will get a copy of a link to the recording and any of the links that we're using in the workshop today. So that will be coming to you later. However, I would like to encourage you to take note of this email address at the bottom of your screen, careers@wgu.edu. I do want to note that we have a lot of people signed up for this workshop today because it's a new one, we think, and we may not be able to get to all of the questions. So please do note this email address if your question does not get answered today, or if you think of something later, you are welcome to email us at that address. The other thing I'd like to note is we will have an active chat. We've got some people monitoring that for us. We are not monitoring the Q&A panel in this workshop, so please do use the chat instead of the Q&A. All right, and we've got someone, Eric is in the chat already sharing their LinkedIn URL. This is a great way to start to connect to some of your peers. So if you would like to share yours, please feel free to do that. Thanks for kicking that off, Eric. All right, just a couple more things that I want to talk about, and then we'll really dive into the content. As I mentioned, we are launching this as part of our suite of workshops for the September Career Quest initiative. And so some upcoming workshops that you may want to pay attention to are, since this one is really focused on developing your LinkedIn profile, we've got some coming up next week about networking and using the LinkedIn alumni tool to locate some of the leads that we're going to be talking about in this workshop. And there's also personal branding and your LinkedIn profile that's coming up. So you will have developed, if you're just starting off on your profile, take some of the tips that you learned today, work with your profile a little bit, and then sign up for that one. It will help you further maximize your profile. And then also later on in the month, there's a workshop for maximizing LinkedIn for your job search. So we hope that you find the suite of workshops this month useful for you as you are developing your LinkedIn presence and doing some networking. And with that, we're going to jump into the roadmap for today. What we'll be covering first is a little bit of information about how powerful a platform LinkedIn is and what it can offer you. In addition, we're going to be looking at providing some insights into how you can optimize your profile so you are more visible in recruiter searches. Then we'll be walking through each of the LinkedIn profile sections, the main sections, and demonstrating some things that are important for you to attend to as you're developing your profile. We've got some next steps, and hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A at the end if they don't get caught in the chat as we go along. But do put those in the chat if there's anything that seems like it would be really relevant to all of our attendees here. We're going to ask our colleagues Cliff and Shante to call that to our attention. And with that, otherwise, again, if you don't get your question answered, you can certainly email it to to careers@wgu.edu. Anything that we do live in terms of responding to questions, we will select questions that are most relevant to the broadest number of people since we have such a big group of people here today. All right, well, let's get going with the content. What about LinkedIn is so great?
So as Dorothy mentioned, LinkedIn is a really powerful platform, and we wanted to draw attention to just a couple of areas and things that you can do on LinkedIn. The first of which is really cultivating your personal brand. So it gives you an online presence and a digital footprint that enables you to really communicate your professional and personal brand to potential employers. Also a great place to build network connections, which as you're already doing in the chat right now, you can see, and we'll share some data in a little bit here that kind of goes through how widespread LinkedIn really is and how many people you can connect with. Can also search for jobs and internships. So new opportunities are regularly posted on LinkedIn, so keep your eye out for those. And then it's also a place where you can explore industries, companies, and career pathways. So if you're wanting to learn more about what you can do with your degree, for example, or what kind of career opportunities might be out there, what other folks have done in your industry, it's a wonderful place to be able to do some of that exploration. So just to give some context around LinkedIn and how impactful and widespread it really is, presently there's over 900 million members, and that's across the entire world. So it also gives you a chance to connect with folks internationally. Presently, there's also 58.4 million, a little over 58.4 million companies that are using the platform. And then over 240,000 WGU alum. So something that Dorothy mentioned is we also host additional webinars that are focused on using something called the LinkedIn alumni tool to be able to leverage that network of alumni. So that's something that you might want to just keep your eyes out for, but know that we have a very large presence on LinkedIn at WGU alum do. And then 94% of recruiters use LinkedIn to find, vet, and hire talent. So it is one of the #1 places to be found by recruiters right now.
I just want to say, go WGU. Wherever else in your life do you get immediate access to almost 250,000 people? So it's a great tool, and we hope that you'll join us with for that other workshop so you can learn how to find those people and connect with them in strategic ways.
And speaking of recruiters and how they use the platform, so I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with LinkedIn Recruiter, but that's really the tool that employers and hiring managers are using on LinkedIn to find and screen talent. And so, like many social media platforms, LinkedIn Recruiter uses an algorithm to rank your content in searches. And so, one of the ways that you can help yourself be more visible in that platform and come up higher in the searches is to add industry keywords into your profile. And something that we talk a lot about is focusing on your future when you're writing your LinkedIn profile. You really want to target the industry that you're seeking so that you are more discoverable by recruiters who are after those specific positions in that specific industry. So some keywords that you might consider integrating in your profile are things like industry specific skills. These would be maybe tools and technologies unique to your industry. Relevant transferable skills. So that could look different depending on the kind of career that you are after, but things like communication, collaboration, innovation, problem solving, thinking about what you can bring to the industry from your previous work history. Certifications. So some industries in particular, especially IT, certifications are going to be something that helps move your profile toward the top. And so those would be another thing to consider to include in your profile. And then target job titles. So again, thinking about writing toward your future, focus on the occupations that you're after and try to integrate some of that language into your profile so that you are more discoverable by recruiters. If you're not sure what keywords to include, a few tips and resources here. So one of which is job descriptions. You can go on to LinkedIn, you can go on to Indeed, look at job descriptions for your target occupations and see what are some of the commonly required skills that they're looking for. What are some of those frequently repeated words in the job descriptions? You can also look at other LinkedIn users' profiles. So maybe you find some alumni who also studied the same degree as you and they're working as software engineers or they're working in the specific occupation that you're after. Those would be great profiles to look at, investigate, see what kind of skills they're using, see what kind of language they've added to their profile. And then there's two resources there. One's called the LinkedIn Economic Graph, and the other is through WGU called Career Coach. And those are resources that you can use to search for skills based on specific occupational titles. So that would be an additional source of information for you. And then I want to draw attention to this last bullet point here. So there's 3 sections of the profile that are indexed higher by the algorithm. And so these 3 sections, it's really critical to make these keyword rich. Try to saturate them with as many keywords as possible. And those 3 sections are the headline, which is going to make more sense as we talk through these in more detail, the job title line, which is in the experience section of your profile, and the skills section. So the more keywords that you include in those sections of your profile in particular, the likelier it is that you'll be moving toward the top of LinkedIn recruiter searches.
Thanks, McCall. I just want to note that I did just drop links to those 2 resources that McCall referred to on this slide in the chat, so you can grab those there if you want to. And again, we will include them in the follow-up email when we send you the link to the recording. Okay,
Thanks,
we're
Dorothy.
gonna, yep, we're gonna jump into the sections of your profile. And remember, as McCall mentioned, there's the 3 that are noted on the bottom of this slide. So we'll spend a fair amount of time on each of those: the headline, the job title line, and the experience section and the skills section. But we are going to cover the rest of them so that you get some tips. And so we're going to jump into that. And one of the things you're going to hear a lot about is keyword, rich keywords. So we'll be talking about that a lot. So pay attention to when we're pointing that out. Here's the deal with your profile photo. You'll get 21 times more views and 9 times more connection requests with a profile photo. So think about the times that you might have been on LinkedIn and you look at a profile and there's no picture there. It doesn't draw you in, does it? I mean, I tend to skip over those. So the same is true when other people are looking at yours. You want to be sure you have a profile photo and a banner. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But here's the statistics that demonstrate why that's important. So here's a few tips about your photo. You want to look at photos of other professionals in your target industry to look at what is the appropriate kind of attire that you want to be representing on your photo. And there are a couple of resources here that McCall, maybe Cliff put in the chat, that are some tools that can help you get some feedback on your photo. So you can upload your photo and you'll get some feedback from industry professionals and peers and colleagues and all kinds of people that's anonymous, and you don't have to ask your family and friends, is this okay? What do you think? You'll get some really good constructive feedback about approachability, or you might want to fill your frame bigger. So those are good places to use to get some feedback about it. And then let's look at this checklist. It should just be you. We don't need a friend or a pet or something else in the photo. Really focus it on you. And you want to make sure that your face fills most of the frame. So it's shoulders and above, not your whole body. You want to make sure that your face shows clearly. And some natural lighting that really features your face well. A neutral background is a good idea, nothing that's distracting. Also, at least, a friendly smile. You want to seem approachable, and also look at the camera. That also conveys a sense of connection. So those are just some tips to think about as you're selecting the photo that you want to upload. Again, use some of those apps to help give you some feedback. Additionally, a banner photo, that's the banner that's behind your, your profile photo, can help you really stand out as a candidate, and it can help you showcase your personal brand, what you're trying to project as a professional on LinkedIn. So obviously you want to keep it very professional looking. You want it aligned with your industry. This is another thing I'd recommend, that you look at profiles of other people that are in your industry, but this is a little bit more personalized, and so you want it to convey something about you. You can get some ideas from some other people, but do look at Canva, these two resources that are listed here, Canva or Unsplash, because you'll get lots of ideas for background photos that you can use. Next, we're going to talk about your URL. When you started, or when you're about to start your LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn automatically assigns you a URL that's the locator for your profile, and it's often a little lengthy and can be a little bit cumbersome. Fortunately, it is extremely easy to customize your profile. So if you look here on, this is on McCall's profile. To the right of the banner, there's this box here where you see public profile and URL, and there's an edit button. That's how you get there. It's quite easy to update it. And this is an important thing. It can help make your profile easier to find. It's easier for people to remember. And you can use this shortened and more professional URL in your other materials like your resume and your cover letter. One note to keep in mind is if you have a more common name, um, it's very likely that your URL with just your name will have been taken by someone else. That's very possible. And so what happens in that case is a lot of times people are looking for a couple of characters to add to the end of their name to be for it to be unique to them. And something you want to avoid is using either 2 or 4 number combinations at the end, which is pretty common, but that can get interpreted as your age or your birth year. So you want to avoid those things so you don't create a misperception. Okay, uh, see the star at the top of this one, headline. This is one of those key sections that McCall was calling your attention to in terms of being indexed high in the LinkedIn Recruiter. So this algorithm is going to pick this up first. It's also the first thing that someone sees when they look at your profile. It's also visible in the summary when people are searching and they just see that brief snapshot. So this is a place that is really important to invest some time and some thoughtfulness into how you're crafting this. It should give your reader just a short snapshot of who you are, what you do, and what you can offer. So this is one of those places where we're recommending that keyword-rich headline because it will give you an edge, a competitive edge over other candidates. So one way to start thinking about this, are those prompts at the bottom of the screen are really helpful. What is my career target? What's my aspirational goal? Where am I heading? That kind of language should be represented in your headline. Also, what are the top skills in my industry that I have acquired and that I can offer? What are the kinds of problems that I can solve for an employer? So we've got some samples in the next slide that we're going to show to you, but just let's take a quick look at this checklist. Again, you want your target job title. This is and should be aspirational, especially if you're a career changer. What LinkedIn often defaults to is your last job title. If you were doing sales, I mean, I hear this a lot from people. I've been doing sales. I don't want to do that anymore. That's all I'm getting targeted. You know, that's the only thing I'm getting from recruiters, and that's because their headline says that they're in sales. So, especially if you're career changing, you don't want to use the work that you're moving away from in your headline title, but rather what you're moving toward. You want to include industry skills, and especially if you've got some of those top skills, make sure that those pop out in your headline. Certifications that you have that would be impressive and important in your industry, and then that value proposition about what you can offer or the problems you can solve. So let's take a look at some examples here. Again, you're going to get a recording of this, so you'll be able to come back and look at these in more depth. But I want to point out at the top, here's just sort of a formula that you maybe want to be thinking about is what's the target job title, include some keyword skills for skills, and then the value proposition statement. Or if you're in a job title that is good for you and you're satisfied with, and you're still looking for advancement, for example, you may want to include certifications and keywords there. So these are just some basic formulas about some things that you can include. I do want to point out that we've got some different symbols here. There's nothing and these do not designate anything specifically. We just wanted to give you some examples that you don't want just to have commas or a run-on sentence here. You do want to separate those with like these straight pipes or a dash or some of these arrows. So those are just some examples of some ways to do that. So we take a look at a few of these headlines down here. You'll see there's, the title. There are, some of the skills and value propositions here listed in the things you see here. And I particularly want to point out this one on the right. It actually says aspiring. So it's okay to say aspiring cybersecurity analyst. This means I'm not one yet, haven't done it necessarily. That's where I'm going. So again, you want to build your headline for the job of your future, not the ones in your past. McCall, anything else to add about that?
No, I see Shantae and Cliff are answering some questions in the chat, and someone had asked where the headline is in your profile, and Cliff had mentioned it's right directly beneath your profile picture. So it's not in the about section, it's right beneath your profile picture. So it's
Yep.
what you'll see when you are looking to connect with people. It's right beneath. Yeah, thanks,
Yep.
Dorothy.
So in
There's
here,
an
this
image
is
right
the
there.
outline right here. This is McCall's. It's, that's right, that's where it is. So, and when you do a search, if you go onto LinkedIn, you search for somebody and there are several people coming up, some of that is visible. So that's what we're saying. It's immediately visible in a search. Great. Thanks for that call out. I think we're ready to move on to the about section.
Perfect. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the About section. And this section, I would say, is one of the more underdeveloped sections. Whenever we do LinkedIn profile reviews, this is a section that I think is a bit challenging for people to build out because it is so robust and offers so much space. We do highly encourage spending some time working on this About section because it is the #1 section viewed by recruiters. So when recruiters land on your page, of course, they're going to see that headline right away, but they spend a lot of time looking at the About section. And so this is a section that you do really want to be thoughtful about and build out. It has the largest character limit of any section in your profile, too. It has up to 2,600 characters. So definitely a lot of space. And ultimately, it should support your headline. So when you're thinking about your value proposition, the skills that you have, the kind of career that you're targeting, you really want to expand on your headline in the About section and expand on what you can offer. What is your professional brand? What do you bring to the table? And so in the About section, you can focus on the skills, experiences, and value that you bring to the field. Again, kind of think about your future. So if you're making a career change, for example, what are the transferable skills that you can bring to the table and you can bring to a future employer? That's what you might choose to focus on if you're making a career pivot, is those transferable skills in your background or the achievements that are most relevant to the career that you're targeting. You can also personalize the About section a little bit more by describing things like your leadership style. If, for example, you were targeting a management role, your passions, what are you really passionate about in the industry? What excites you? Some of your unique strengths, again, maybe there are some transferable skills or some unique industry knowledge that you can bring. And so be thinking about those as well. And then as usual, just always be integrating keywords just to increase your discoverability. That's kind of across the board and LinkedIn, but the About section is another great place to showcase your skills. And we wanted to provide some writing tips because, again, this can sometimes feel daunting for people because it is a big section of the profile. And so unlike the resume, one of the tips is write in first person. So LinkedIn is a storytelling platform. So you have that flexibility to be a little bit more personal in your writing style. And at the very top of your About section, that's going to be what people initially see when they are on the app or when they're on their desktop. So you want to open it up with a hook. And I can give some prompts that you can think about in terms of opening up with a hook. But in general, those first couple of lines, you want to entice the reader and draw them in so that they are interested in learning more about your background and the value that you'll bring. And in general, it's good to stick to about 3 to 5 paragraphs, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on how much you want to build this out. But I would recommend around 3 to 5 paragraphs. And just we've provided some prompts in here too to be thinking about how you can build out each of those paragraphs. So maybe in your opening, you talk a little bit about what you do. What are some of the specific experiences that you have, or what is it that you bring to the table? Why do you do it? So what are your passions about this industry? What drew you to this industry initially? What motivates you? So why are you motivated to pursue this kind of work? What really excites you when you are working on certain projects or working with teams? What is it about the work that you do that really draws you in? So that can be kind of the opening. The middle paragraphs, this is kind of similar to a cover letter in the sense that you're going to be talking more about the specific skills that you have, the specific experiences that you have. So what are the industry skills and knowledge that you possess? These could be skills built through your professional experience, or maybe they're skills that you built through your education. If you are making a career pivot, especially, maybe you want to draw attention to some of the knowledge and skills you've obtained from your coursework. Again, transferable skills, this is a great place to talk about those. How do you achieve results? What are the actions that you take? What are the strengths that you have that help you achieve the results in your industry? And then for the final paragraph, this looks different again, depending on your unique circumstances, but maybe you can talk a bit about your goals. Where are you hoping to head in the industry? What kind of opportunities are you seeking? Are you looking for leadership roles? Are you looking for teaching roles? What kind of work are you interested in? And where do you want to grow? How do you see yourself growing and developing? Are there certain areas that you hope to develop in? That's what you can focus on in that final paragraph. And again, these aren't comprehensive by any means, but just something to help you get started thinking about how you might build out this section of the profile. And then I won't spend too much time reading all of these off, but these are some sample headers that you might use. So something we often recommend is breaking up your content with a few section headers, because that's going to really help make your information more digestible so that recruiters aren't just looking at a big paragraph of text, but instead they can be guided through your about section with these headers. And how this works too is when you're in the little editing box in your about section, you can just copy and paste headers in, or you can just do caps. There's different resources on a LinkedIn user guide that we'll share later on in this presentation that you can use to create specialized headers if you'd like. But these are just some samples that you could use to guide the reader through your content. So for your opening paragraph, for example, what I do, why a career in software development, my passions. The middle paragraph could be problems I solve, my top 5 strengths. What are kind of the big elements that you are known for or that you feel are kind of your greatest strengths? How I influence outcomes. So again, thinking back to how do I make progress in my career on the teams that I support? What skills do I use? What tools do I use? And then the closing paragraph, my career goals, where I want to go, opportunities that excite me. If you wanted to talk a little bit about the things that you're really passionate about that you enjoy doing in the day to day. So these are just some headers that you could include if you wanted to break up that content a little bit.
Thanks, McCall. I just want to reemphasize what you said. That about section is often very underdeveloped when we do LinkedIn profile reviews. They're, fairly thin. This is an opportunity for you to really include some very robust and rich language about yourself, those rich keywords. And again, recruiters are interested in this section. So you might as well take advantage of the opportunity to do that. McCall, just really quickly before we go on, I want to hop back because I saw something skating by in that very active chat about editing. I'm not sure I got that, but I do want to point out in terms of in each of these sections, when you are in your profile, there's this little pen here. So this is, I pointed this out before when I was talking about the public profile and the URL, the little pen there shows if you click that, that gets you into the edit mode. You'll see just above this arrow, there's one for the profile language. So each of the sections is going to have a pin in the corner like that. And that's how you get into edit it. So I want to make sure that you all knew that. All right. And let me get back here we're going to head to the experience section, which is another one that has one of those asterisks on it.
Yep. So the experience section is, and the next slide after this, we're going to talk about job titles specifically. That's the line that's indexed higher by the algorithm. But the experience section, in a lot of ways, this can mirror your resume. We get a lot of questions about that. Like, can this look exactly the same as my resume? Yes, it can. And you're also given a lot more space on LinkedIn. So if you wanted to expand on anything, you certainly could. In general, for the professional experience section, it's best to go back only 10 to 15 years. And this is general best practices for resume and LinkedIn. It just minimizes the potential for any sort of age bias or age discrimination. Now, with anything that like this, it varies based on the individual and their circumstances. Sometimes someone has experience from more than 15 years ago that's really relevant to their target industry. And so if you ever are feeling like, oh, well, I'm not really sure if I should include something, you can always, ask for a LinkedIn profile review or meet with a career advisor to talk about your unique situation. But this is just a general best practice to follow. And then something else, you can always add relevant unpaid experience. So there is a volunteering section within LinkedIn. However, if you had a volunteer position that's really relevant to your target industry, like say you volunteered in a hospital and you're going for healthcare management, then that might be something worthwhile to consider including in your professional experience section instead. Same thing with internships. This is definitely where you're going to want to include relevant internships, even if they're unpaid. And so keep that in mind as well as you're kind of building out this section. There could be unpaid experiences that you have that you might want to bring up in this section so that it's seen right away. Okay, and then the job title line. So again, that job title line has that asterisk because it is indexed higher. And so it's important to try to make that job title line keyword rich. This isn't always possible, and that's okay. But here are just some strategies that you might consider when thinking about making a more keyword rich job title line. And you can develop something called compound job titles. And so what that is it would be a description of kind of the different roles that you hold within a position. So you might start with your actual job title, for example, marketing associate, but maybe you're doing a lot of social media strategizing in that role. And something that you're targeting for your career is a social media heavy position. You could add that to your job title line by also saying social media strategist. So you can start with that actual job title, but then separate with the symbol and maybe add some other job titles that represent additional roles that you've held in a position, especially if you feel like that will make you more marketable for the kinds of jobs that you're targeting. So another example, instructional designer. You might be developing content pretty consistently, and some of the job titles you might be applying to are content development jobs. And so you could add the descriptor content developer. An alternative to this would be adding keywords that represent your responsibilities within a role. So a good example of this is human resources. You might have a lot of different kinds of responsibilities that you're doing in HR, and you can start with your job title first, human resources coordinator, and then list maybe 3 of the top responsibilities that you had, keywords that represent those responsibilities. So recruiting, onboarding, payroll. And this is just going to help you be more discoverable on that LinkedIn recruiter search if you have some of these keywords in your profile. So just know that you can get a little creative with that. And it's important to lead with the actual job title, but you can always add and supplement to that to really make it a more rich line and descriptor for recruiters.
I can't wait to see how all these LinkedIn profiles are going to start improving all these searches. That's great information. All right, we're going to move to education. What you want to focus on in your education is post-secondary experiences, degree work that you've done. So that means no high school. That's not necessary on a LinkedIn profile. You do, especially if you're early in your career, want to add your graduation year because there are recruiters that are looking for recent graduates for specific kinds of roles. So if that is a situation that would apply to you, be sure that you include your graduation year on your degree. Here's one of the places where, I think when LinkedIn started or when a lot of people get onto LinkedIn, they think, this is the online version of my resume. And it is sort of, but it's so much more than that. And this is another one of those sections where you can really take advantage of the flexibility on LinkedIn, because on your resume, you're basically going to be listing your degree and your graduation dates and the institutional location where you earned it. You might include something like a capstone project, or if you're new in your career, you might be including a few relevant courses. But here you can expand upon this a little bit. So you can talk about academic accomplishments and skills that you gain in the degree, capstone projects, things like that, even activities and societies that you belong to, participated in as part of your degree program. However, you also want to be a little bit judicious about that, because if you're involved in a lot of things, you want to be really thinking about things that do relate to your career goals, because think a little bit like the reader when you're making decisions about this. If you had a great time, you've had a great time in your degree program, did a lot of extra things, and you are proud about all that, and you want to demonstrate that. So you include all of those things, but your reader is really looking for how you're qualified for the role. So if there are a lot of additional things in there that don't relate to the career direction that you're going in, those can serve as sort of a distraction and bury your qualifications. So be judicious about what you include here. There are some other sections, additional sections that we'll touch on very briefly in a few minutes, that you may look to add some of those other kinds of things that help demonstrate how interesting you are as a person, but they're not necessarily related to the direction you're going into. So for sections like this, you really do want to focus it on where you're aiming. But take advantage of the opportunity to be provide a little bit more detail than you necessarily can on your resume. Same is true for licenses and certifications. Obviously, these are the kinds of things that really showcase your knowledge and your achievements in your career area, and that helps you be a competitive candidate. It also demonstrates how committed you are to continuing education, personal growth, and learning more about your industry. So you do want to highlight these things. Again, though, you want to keep them relevant to your target industry. If you have a certification in something that's completely unrelated, you might note that maybe as related to something that an organization that you're a part of in a different section, but you don't want to have a long list of things that are not related to what you're aiming for, because again, that can be distracting to the things that really are the relevant qualifications for you. You also can include a URL if you've got a certification. You can include the URL for that issuing organization, and so that it demonstrates that you are connected to that organization, that that's where you received that license or that certification, and that helps boost the credibility of your statement of that achievement. All right, we're going to move on to skills.
Yeah, so the skills section is another one of those sections that it is critical to try to get as many of those keywords in again. So we keep repeating keyword rich, and this is another area. This is the third area that's indexed higher. So something to note is that your profile will get 17 times more views when you've included at least 5 skills. And we recommend including more than 5, but at a bare minimum, make sure that you have at least 5 so that it is increasing your profile views. You can also add up to 50 skills. So the max is 50, and the more that you add, the more likely it is that you're going to show up higher in search results. And something that I want to draw attention to here too is when you go in to add the skills, when you start typing in a skill, like say you're starting to type in program management, a drop-down menu is going to populate, and it's going to show you all of the skills that already exist on the back end of LinkedIn. And so for search engine optimization, whenever possible, try to select those that are from the drop-down menu so that you are more discoverable that way. If there's not one in there, that's okay. If it's still a skill that you really want to highlight and you feel is important, you can still add that skill yourself, but try whenever possible to select them from the drop-down menu just to make sure you're grabbing those that are already in the system. And for a similar reason, and this is true for resumes typically too, if there's an option to choose a skill that's both spelled out and abbreviated, that's always preferred. So for example, something like customer relationship management. If there's an option that just lists that, and the one below it says customer relationship management parentheses CRM, you're going to want to select that one in case the recruiters are typing CRM into LinkedIn Recruiter. That way you're more likely to come up regardless of which version they decide to type in the search bar. And then when you're actually editing your skills section, you're going to note that you're able to actually move your skills around and reorder them. And so your top 3 skills are going to be showcased on your profile. So when people are scrolling through your profile and they get to the skills section, they're going to see those top 3 skills first. And so I always recommend making sure that those 3 skills are directly related to your target industry and that they're high priority keywords. So they're keywords that are maybe in your headline, or they're keywords that you've identified through your research as being really critical to your target occupation or industry. So be sure to double check your skills section and make sure that you have top loaded those 3 that are most important. And then I tell people too, it's valuable real estate. So when you are looking through your skills section, if there's any repeats, just switch that out for a different skill, because you kind of add up to 50, of course, but it is important to just try to make that as versatile as possible so that you're not repeating something that's already been in there. And then lastly, you're given the option to complete skill assessments. So when you're in and editing the skills section, there is an optional button that says demonstrate skills or something of that nature. If you click on that, you will be given the choice to complete skill assessments, which reinforce your expertise with a specific skill. And this tends to be more true for technologies. Like there's skill assessments for Microsoft, for example. And sometimes employers will prioritize applicants who've completed those skill assessments, especially if they're really active on LinkedIn Recruiter. You might even notice sometimes that if you apply to a job within LinkedIn, they'll ask you to complete a skill assessment. And something to keep in mind with these skill assessments is that you have the option of including it in your profile. So if you take it and you're not in the top 30% or you don't like the score that you received, you don't have to share it. And that's not going to be visible. It's only visible once you share it from your actual profile. So if you are looking for a chance to really reinforce the knowledge that you have and show recruiters that you're particularly skilled in this area, that's a great way to do it. And then recommendations. So recommendations are, so far we've kind of talked about the core sections of the LinkedIn profile, and recommendations are an additional section that you can add. There's lots of sections you can add to LinkedIn, but this is one of them. And one thing to note about recommendations is that you can only request recommendations on LinkedIn from someone you're connected with. So that's another good reason to expand your network connections, is it does give you a chance to actually reach out to maybe some people you've worked with in the past to request a recommendation. You're not going to be able to do that if you're not connected. But some of the benefits of requesting recommendations are, one, it bolsters your professional credibility. So it's really backing up the skills and experience and achievements that you have if someone else is kind of describing what you've accomplished. It just kind of gives you an added boost. Standing out from competitors. So you'll note that a lot of people don't have recommendations on LinkedIn. It's one of, again, kind of like the about section, it's a little underdeveloped. So if possible, it is great to reach out to some folks and get those recommendations because it could really help set you apart and gives you a chance to really highlight your strengths and achievements from the perspective of people that you've worked with. So you can reinforce your brand, you can reinforce the value proposition that you've indicated throughout your profile. And a few notes about who you might want to request recommendations from. So these are just examples. There could be other folks out there that you might want to request from, but some good ones could be managers. So those could be former managers that you feel like you had a good relationship with, internship supervisors. If you're going into a leadership role, it might be helpful to get recommendations and solicit them from people that you've supervised so that they can speak to your leadership qualities. Colleagues, especially if maybe you're not overly comfortable reaching out to a former manager, you can always reach out to a colleague that you had a strong relationship with, maybe a colleague that you worked on a project with that could really speak to some specific abilities. Program faculty, if you have a strong relationship with any program faculty, or clients, if you are going into a role where you're going to be seeing clients regularly. That could be a good way to demonstrate the skills and expertise that you have in delivering customer service and delivering the service that you are to these clients. And then how to request recommendations. So in general, it's best to focus on quality over quantity. So it's better to have 4 really high quality recommendations than it is to have 10 generic recommendations. And when you go to request a recommendation, there's a space where you can provide notes for the person who's writing it. And so in that space, I recommend providing context around your goals. So what are you hoping to gain from this recommendation? What are some of your career goals? Where are you hoping to head? So that they have some ideas on what kind of skills and specifics that they might want to focus on. And you can be direct about that too. If there are specific projects that maybe you worked on with someone, you can bring that up and ask if they would be open to highlighting some of the specific accomplishments that you had with that. And then it's always nice to offer to reciprocate. So just giving them the chance to request a recommendation from you, just offering that you would be open to doing that is always really helpful as well.
All right, we're going to take a quick look at some additional sections here just to briefly touch on those. If you recall, I was mentioning in a couple of previous sections like education or licenses and certifications, if you have things that are important for you to project as part of your personal brand, but they're not necessarily targeted to your, your direct targeted career path, you may find another place in some of these additional sections where you can indicate some of that experience as well. But we do recommend that you take a look at profiles of other LinkedIn users that are in your field to see which of these sections that they've included. There may be some sections that are more important for different industries than others. So do sort of a pattern analysis and look across a number of people who are professionals in your field who are a little farther down the road in their career path and see what they've included, and to help prompt you to think about what are some things that you could include in those sections as well. So we're not going to go through these individually, but we just wanted to list these here so you're aware that they're there. Take a look at them, give yourself some reflection time to see if there's some things that you can add in these sections that may also help round out your profile. McCall, is there anything you want to add about those sections?
I saw in the chat much earlier, Cliff responded to a question about volunteering experience, and someone had asked, so if it's not relevant, do I not include it in my profile? With just to give some clarification around that, if your volunteer experience is relevant to your career target, then you might want to put it in your professional experience section just to really draw attention to it. If not, and you don't have relevant volunteer experience, you can still add that to the volunteering section of your profile if you want to demonstrate community engagement, especially if you are applying to a company, for example, that really cares about that. Some companies really value community engagement, so that volunteer section is something to think about. Even if it's not relevant to necessarily what you're pursuing, you wouldn't want to build it out in extreme detail, but just thinking about how you might want to show that you are actively engaged in the community.
Great, thanks for that.
And then just a quick few notes about settings. These are some common questions that we get. And so I would recommend when you get a moment, just going into your own settings later on and looking at the visibility if this is something that you do want to adjust. So in the visibility section of your settings, you can edit your profile viewing options. And that gives you the chance to select how you want your profile to be viewed publicly. How much information are you okay with sharing? And again, this looks very different for every individual, but LinkedIn does give those privacy options to where you're able to adjust those visibilities to meet your specific needs. I will say too, there's a section in there that talks about what you want to show other people when you view their profile. So someone had mentioned in the chat, like keep in mind that when you go on to someone's profile page in LinkedIn, it will show them that you looked at their profile. There's a way to edit those settings too. If you didn't want people to know that you were looking at their profile, sometimes people want to be more private for particular reasons. And other times, if you're really actively job searching, it might be beneficial for people to know that you specifically looked at their profile in case maybe they reciprocate or in case it ends up being someone that you want to reach out to. But just be aware that you can go in and you can adjust those settings to meet your individual needs. And then we get a lot of questions about the open to work feature. So we just wanted to spend a little bit of time drawing attention to that as well. And what you'll see in these clips here is where you can actually access this feature. So the open to work feature is demonstrating to recruiters whether or not you are essentially open to work. Are you actively looking for opportunities? So underneath your profile picture and headline, you're going to see that little blue tag that says open to. And if you click it, it'll bring up a separate box here. And at the bottom, you'll see that you can either select recruiters only or all LinkedIn members. And so you do want to be thoughtful about this because sometimes people are currently employed and, for example, they don't want their current employer to know that they're looking for work. And in that case, you might want to select recruiters only because precautions are taken to prevent visibility from your current company. I will say that LinkedIn notes that this isn't 100% accurate. They can't ensure privacy entirely. So keep that kind of in the back of your minds too. But in general, they take as many precautions as possible to make sure that that isn't visible to people at your current company within LinkedIn Recruiter. And if you select recruiters only, you're not going to get that green banner around your picture either. So it would present just as mine does right now in this clipping right here. You wouldn't have that green banner that says hashtag open to work. In contrast, say you were recently laid off or you're comfortable with your employer knowing that you're looking for work or any other certain circumstances where it might be relevant for you to make that visible to all LinkedIn members. And in that case, you would have the banner showcased around your personal profile that says hashtag open to work. And something else I wanted to make sure to share about this is in either of these cases, if you indicate that you're open to work, whether that's to recruiters only with no green banner or to all LinkedIn members with a green banner, you will be spotlighted in LinkedIn Recruiter. So that is a setting that recruiters will be able to see, and they oftentimes will prioritize people who are open to work. So keep that in mind as well when you're thinking about this setting if you're actively looking for work.
All right. Well, we walked through most of the sections in LinkedIn, at least the critical ones that are important for you to be paying attention to. Again, all of the sections that we covered today, we would really encourage you to spend some time populating with your information. Again, we want to encourage you to look at those additional sections that we pointed out to see if there are places there that you want to add some things. We have some next steps for you. One is obviously it's most useful if you can be clear about where you're heading. You know, what's your target industry and what's your occupation? If you're not, we'd be happy to invite you to have an appointment with one of our career advisors to help you coach you through, strategize, think through what are some ways that you can get some more clarity about that. So if you're not in that place, don't let that stop you from proceeding on developing your profile. I think I saw somebody, I scanned by in the chat really quickly about it's a work in progress. I hope it's always a work in progress. Your LinkedIn profile and your resume should never be done because you're going to always want to be updating and staying active with those things. But you certainly, regardless of where you are in your career path, can get started in developing your profile, building it out, because again, you can always change it as your circumstances change. One thing that we have for you to help you is the LinkedIn user guide, and I think Shantae just put that in that link in the chat for you, and again we will send that out as part of our follow-up material. This is a great resource, so please take a look at that. It also goes through every section of the LinkedIn user guide. This is actually the document that we use when we do a review of LinkedIn profiles, and so you'll see on it, you know, it looks great or it needs improvement with space for comments. But in the right-hand column of that guide, there are tips for every section. A lot of it's reinforcing what we've been talking about today, but it also has links about how do you actually do this. You know, many of them are links to LinkedIn Learning videos, but it will actually show you, demonstrate how do you open this section, what are the things that you need to do to manipulate the information. So there's some great additional tips in that as well. I want to go back to the pitch that I made at the beginning of our workshop today about these additional workshops that are coming up this month in terms of personal branding, getting started networking and looking for leads, and then also using LinkedIn to maximize your job search. So please take a look at those. Those registrations are available through Handshake, the same place that you were able to register for this one. And also we want to invite you to consider, you know, when you've spent some time working with the material that we've presented today and updating your profile, we do LinkedIn profile reviews on our team. So the way, if you are interested in having another set of eyes on your profile and some feedback, you need to send your customized LinkedIn URL to us at careers@wgu.edu and request a review, and we'd be happy to provide that for you. But the next thing I want to ask you in terms of your next step is, after you've listened to what we've been talking about today, what is one step that you will commit to taking about developing your LinkedIn profile in the next week? What is one thing you can commit to in the next 7 days? And I'd love it if any of you would be, you know, open to popping that in the chat. There's something about putting things in writing and putting them out to the world that helps us create more accountability for ourselves. So let's see what you're all going to be up to. Keywords, single skill assessments, updating everything. Well, that's a lot. That probably is going to happen in a week. Go through the guide. Wow, you guys are awesome. Skills, profile picture, even just a profile picture, background. This is terrific. Adjusting URL, great first step. Personal section, target industry. I'm so glad. I think you were all listening really well today. This is excellent. Great. Well, we're looking forward to some wonderfully updated LinkedIn profiles. Uh, we've got a question from Chrisanne. Is it possible to have too much information on the profile? Uh, I mean, I think that's always true. Like in a resume, you want to be really focused, right? And so you're making decisions on a resume about what to include and not to include because you really want to focus your reader's attention on the things that demonstrate your highest qualifications for a role. The same thing, that same lens is something you should use on your LinkedIn profile. Again, you have a lot more flexibility as you've seen here today in terms of like that about section gives you lots of space. One of the things that McCall was pointing out is putting those into sections and creating section headers. So one of the things you want to be thinking about is readability, ease of reading and skimmability. And if you have too much information, that makes it difficult for someone to see your highest qualifications for the particular kind of role that you're aspiring toward. That's probably too much information. So if you're concerned about having too much information, I definitely recommend that you get some other eyes on it and get some feedback for your profile. All right, we've got somebody getting a professional picture. High school information is too much. Yeah, I'm assuming that maybe means you're going to take yours off. I haven't been following the chat. That's been speeding through there, but so I want to give Cliff and Shantae just a chance. You two have been monitoring this chat, and I'm wondering if there's anything that either one of you wants to call out to us that would be important for the rest of the group to hear.
Yes, I'd say a couple of things, and this didn't come up, I don't believe, but I think it's worth asking. What about buying into the LinkedIn profile or a professional level of LinkedIn? Is that necessary?
Premium?
Premium, yep.
That's always an interesting question. I would say one of the things that you have as a WGU student or alumni is you have access to some of those features like LinkedIn Learning that you get when you purchase LinkedIn Premium. So you already have that. So I think, my recommendation is that you use LinkedIn for a while until you get really comfortable with it. And if you feel like you're not getting the response that you want, you may want to look into that. But McCall, you maybe know better than I do. Do you have thoughts about what LinkedIn Premium would provide that they don't already get as a WGU person?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it depends a lot on your circumstances. What I will say is that it's probably going to be most beneficial if you're really actively job searching pretty heavily. And I say that because at a certain point, you do hit limitations with, there's a ton that you can do without premium. So I should just say that to start. You don't need premium. But if you, for example, wanted to do a lot of searches for like employers, people who are working at some of the companies you're targeting, sometimes you'll hit a limit within the month without the premium account. So again, if you're actively job searching, that could be a benefit. The other thing too, if you apply to jobs using LinkedIn Premium, you will see data analytics around what the other applicants are like. So for example, what are some of the common education that other applicants have? So if you're interested in those kinds of data analytics too, that can be beneficial. But ultimately, like Dorothy said, there is a lot you can do without needing to pay for that premium account. And so it really just depends on your circumstances. The other thing I will say is that from personal experience, my husband had a premium account and it automatically renewed. And we didn't want it anymore. And we just told LinkedIn we don't want this, and it gave us a refund right away. So I don't know if that's still happening, but if you wanted to try out premium, there might be a way to do like a free trial, or you could go back and say, I don't want to use this anymore. And again, I don't know if that's for sure still the case, but I would recommend only really looking into it if you are heavily job searching and you're doing a lot of those kind of searches and you're really interested in those data analytics. Also, someone brought up AI in the chat. LinkedIn continues to roll out new AI features, and those tend to be more accessible for premium members. So AI that helps you build out your about section, AI that helps you respond to recruiters' messages in your InMail. So that's another thing just to pay attention to if that's something you're interested in. There's other resources you can use, and of course you can use us for a review, but that's a feature that tends to be more unique to premium when they're rolling out new things like AI. They'll do it with premium accounts.
Mhm. Also, Chris Ann says that if you're a military veteran, you can get probably a year free of premium. So you want to check that out and see how that works and you qualify for that status.
That's a great tip.
Great.
Thank
Yeah.
you. All right, we're getting close to time. I want to make sure that you know how to get in touch with us. Here is our website where we have lots and lots of resources. If you haven't been there yet, please take a look and do a little dive into what's available for you. That's available to you after you graduate as well. You do need to be logged in with your single sign-on to download many of those resources. Again, here's our team email where you can reach us if you've got questions. Additionally, we've got a message line. You can leave a message here and we will respond to your call as best we can the same business day if we receive that message before 2 p.m. Mountain Time. Otherwise, it might be the next business day. We're also on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So we'd love to be connected with you more. Again, we are here to support you, and you are welcome to make an appointment with us if you've got specific circumstances that you'd like to discuss with an advisor. Thanks everybody for coming today. We hope this is helpful. We'd love your feedback. We want to continue to learn alongside you and with everybody else and improve this. So if you've got suggestions for how to help make this better in the future, that would be a great gift to us. Appreciate your participation. You are a terrific group today. Thank you for being so active in the chat and for sharing your LinkedIn profiles with each other. Way to get started networking with each other. All right, hope to see you in some of those upcoming workshops next week and the rest of the month. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank
Thanks.
you.